Good morning, Joe Rojas. How are you doing today?
I am doing good. How about you?
I'm glad that you're in such a good space. I don't know that I can echo the same
Do
sentiments,
you
but
know what I'm
I will say at least the weather is nice and we're still alive, which there we go. But it has been a pretty insane week in all aspects for
So
myself.
they broke me this week, which is why I feel so good. They actually broke my brain broke yesterday. And then I was just like, yeah, I'm good, man. I stopped caring.
There's a point at which you just can't care anymore.
I got so mad this week. And then it pushed to a certain point where I was just like, I just stopped caring. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm fine. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride.
So let's chat a little bit
And chat
about
with Jeff about it.
So there are a couple of things that I'd like to chat about today, specifically regarding last week. I think there's a lot of the conversation misses the point. I think we talk a lot about what happened. We talk a lot
Yeah.
about the concerns we have. We talk about whether people should get locked up or not. But I think what we're missing is the why this matters. And so there are a couple of things that I'd like to bring up from a power perspective. There's the Signal debacle.
Mhm.
I think there's some interesting implications from the Signal debacle and chilling effect of the regime's actions on free speech. And I think those are a couple of areas where we can really see the impact of power and power laws and how they're having a long-term effect on American politics, but not just American politics, on the geopolitical landscape. So I thought that's where we'd start today. Sound
That
okay?
sounds good to me.
Power moves in the shadows and out in the open. Do you see it? Hosted by Jeff Lair, Masters of Influence uncovers the tactics of persuasion, control, and decision-making that shape history, business, and everyday life. Through stories, interviews, and expert insights, we pull back the curtain on the forces shaping our world. Let's decode power together.
We're recording this on the 29th of March, 2025, which seems really important to say because things change so fast here that this may be woefully out of
Oh yeah, this is by
Alright.
the time that somebody listens to this like on Wednesday, it'll be like, oh, that old story.
Oh, that old story. Which, by the way, the power play in and of
Oh yeah.
itself. This idea of just continuing to go further and further. Like, I think the announcement of tariffs was pretty clearly orchestrated to shift attention away from the issues with the signal leak and that sort of thing. And that's part of the regime's strategy
Yeah.
is bombard people with stuff, keep information flowing so fast that people can't keep up with it, which allows you to change and adjust and do the things you want to do while everybody's looking over here. You can just go do stuff over
Yeah.
here. But I think that what was really revealed with the Signal debacle, which was quickly, can't imagine anybody in the entire world not knowing what happened, but basically
for posterity, when they listen to this, like a couple of years from now, we should tell them what the Signal debacle is.
If my dream of somebody actually listening to the podcast. But let's say somebody does, and then somebody does listen to it when we're famous, and they're going back and they're like, oh, no, what was the Signal debacle? So this wasn't about signal versus noise, right? This was about national security advisor. This is about the head of the military. It's about the vice president going on a chat. Okay, going on a chat, a signal chat.
Not going, forming a Signal chat.
Forming So, clearly my verb usage is off. Forming a signal chat to talk about military strikes, planning military strikes using emojis in their planning of military strikes, things like fists and guns and we're going to get them type of stuff, and including a journalist in this chat completely by mistake. And a lot of the emphasis has been on the fact that they included a journalist. Oh my gosh, you included a journalist. Or the fact that they included the wrong person. How did they include the wrong person? What's going on here? They're sharing this information with the wrong people. And even though the administration or the regime is in no way taking any responsibility for what happened, the very small admissions that are out there are things like, oh, the Atlantic hacked into our Signal account, or there's something's wrong with the Signal account. And all of that is completely beside the point. It has nothing to do with the major issue that this breach implies. So you told me something interesting about Signal. Hopefully you remember. I'm putting you on the spot here, but you told me something interesting about an advisory, I think from the FBI, where they said,
from
do
the
not use
Pentagon,
it.
from the Pentagon that went out in 2023 saying, don't use Signal. State actors and potentially compromise Signal. Do not put anything under penalty of you're going to get locked up.
Yeah, so the advisory was state actors have compromised Signal. We can't guarantee that it is secure.
There you go.
Do not use it.
There you go.
Now, when you are, and I know this because you told me so. Now, when you are planning a military strike, there are rules about where you are supposed to plan a military strike. Assume you know those rules and where you're supposed to do
Yeah,
this.
you're supposed to do it either in a skiff.
In a skiff, right?
Or
this is
in
the
a
point,
skiff.
all right? So for people who don't know what a skiff is, right? It is a sensitive compartmented information facility. So this is a secure, air-gapped, structured facility where you can have conversations and be sure that your conversations are secure. They have secure telephones. They have secure communication systems. Not some rinky-dink app that somebody said, oh, this is secure. No, these are actually secure environments. And yeah, could somebody break into them? Probably, but you know what? Probably not very much, and it would be pretty hard, and they'd have to spend a lot of money. Not like Signal, where they already have a way in.
Yeah.
And you have to actually, this would be hard to break into a skiff. And they're always trying to improve these things. And these things are pretty gosh darn secure. So you're supposed to have these things in a skiff. And the whole thing about, but they did this on Signal, and should they do this on Signal? In a skiff, you are not allowed to bring a cellular phone, not a government-issued cellular phone, not a private cellular phone. You got to leave the damn thing outside because they are not secure, full stop. That's why they put a skiff at Mar-a-Lago, so that Trump could have secure conversations. That's why they have traveling skiffs. They have skiffs on airplanes, right? Like they have these facilities to let you have secure conversations. So the point is that when you are using a publicly available app, you are not using a skiff, which means that you are potentially sharing information with the entire world. In this case, they actually shared it directly with
The press.
journalist.
I'm sorry, but I laughed.
But here's the point though, right? They shared it with the press, but we don't know how many other state actors they shared it with.
We don't know. We'll never know.
We don't know how many other people were listening to this who haven't published the
Yeah.
fact that they were listening to it. So The Atlantic actually did us an amazing favor by publishing these things because they said, look, this is happening. But other people we know, because of what the Pentagon said, because the Pentagon said that this has been infiltrated by state actors, we know that they're being listened to by others in exactly the same way, which is one reason why the military was not very happy. The pilots who were flying these missions, who were fighting anti-aircraft weaponry, were not super impressed to find out
Mhm.
that these plans had been shared through an app like Signal, which everybody knew was not secure. So let's talk a little bit about why this matters. Because it's not about a leak to the press. Did you catch the Prime Minister of Canada's speech this week?
And then you and I talked about it, and then I went and watched it. And we're done with the U.S. We're no
Yeah, so
longer.
here's the quote. Here's the quote. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integrations of our economies and tight security and military operations, is over. As they did this, they canceled joint economic plans and they froze intelligence sharing. And as I understand it, I don't know how public this is from what sort of my research, which I don't think is necessarily reliable, but from what I have been able to find, they have also suspended joint military operations, which has been crucial to U.S. defense, our ability to use Canadian airspace, the Canadian missile protection system for any missiles that might come in through the north.
Yep.
That has been an essential part of
NORAD
our
has
defense.
been a big.
My understanding, and I just can't vouch for this being
Yeah.
100% true, but my understanding is that NORAD is now put on hold, which is massive. This is a huge deal. And I think this is the implication. Why is anybody going to share intelligence with the United States if our leaders are unable to keep that intelligence secure? Why is anybody going to share intelligence
They're
with us?
completely unable, right? There's a German outlet that reportedly finds officials' private contact information online. They had public Venmo accounts. They had Gmail accounts. They found passwords on the dark web. They were able to find all this stuff. And it wasn't until
So tell us that story, Joe. Tell us the
so
story, because you.
I'm gonna actually throw
What
it in the chat for you.
Just, I don't want it in the chat, Joe. I want you to tell
I know,
us.
but the German news outlet Der Spiegel reportedly found private contact information online for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and National Security Advisor Mike Wallace, who were involved in the Signal Group. And they found his mobile number, active email addresses sent by a commercial provider for the personal information purposes, but even they had Venmo accounts, like public Venmo accounts. So you can actually see all their contacts on the Venmo accounts. So for any, so I said that. Take that, put that in your brain for a minute.
So I
Hold
just
on.
want to summarize. So the story, Der Spiegel ran they did a dark web scan of all of these people, and they found
Yes.
this information that Joe was talking about.
Yes. So Der Spiegel did that. They found it and they put that stuff. The problem here is that these folks are a bunch of amateurs. They are not professional people running the organizations that they need to be running.
So if all of your contact data is available, if you are showing who all of your friends are, who you're connected
You're
to,
completely
you
vulnerable.
make it easy for other people to threaten the people. You make it easy for other people to connect with people that you know. So agents out there are able to get closer to you. They're able to find your house. They're better able to threaten you. They're also able to use all of this publicly available information to figure out what your passwords are and to find ways to communicate with you. It's easier for them to spoof others. It's easier for them
fish you,
pretend to fish
yeah.
you. Like all of these things are easier. So when you go into these security positions, you are briefed on this stuff. You are explained to what you can and cannot have. You got to get rid of a lot of these accounts. You have to change the way that you engage because the stakes are much higher. And there is no way that a Fox News host understands these things. There's
And
no
that-
way that I understand these
Listen,
things. To be clear,
I've been in technology, but I work for the Department of Defense. When I worked for the Department of Defense, we were briefed, but the level that they're at, there's no way for me to understand any of that stuff, like how much
so
it takes to actually have no footprint, which is what you need.
And so, because of that, when you go in to take these rules, you listen to your advisors, you listen to the experts who tell you this is what you need to do, this is how you need to change things, which is what I would have done because I'm clueless, which is probably what you would have done because you might be less clueless,
But I'm
you're still
clueless.
clueless. And right, you go in and they're like, oh, you can't have this app for this reason. You'd say, oh, okay. But if you just fire all of the people who know and don't listen to the briefings, then you cannot possibly know what you're doing. And you're going to continuously make mistakes like this. And because of this, they're just demonstrating an unbelievable stupidity. And because it is just stupidity
Well,
and incompetence.
that's it. It's the incompetence that kills me because on that chat was the director of the CIA. Like the
director of the CIA who is eagerly revealing intelligence and information that has been gathered by the CIA and gathered by secret actors. He's happily revealing this on an app that everybody knows is compromised
yes.
and putting everybody at risk. So what matters is that the EU, Canada, our information partners, Germany, are now saying,
We can't trust you.
we're not going to share information with
We
you.
can't trust you.
And I haven't seen anything from the EU that says that they're not sharing information with us. But this thing from Germany that you brought up is a clear indication that somebody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
And Canada did stop sharing information with us. Our closest ally, we share a border with these guys. And they're like, no, we're not going to share information with you. And the reason is not a petty reason. The reason is that they cannot trust the United States regime to keep information secret. So by not keeping information secret, we're putting their sources and their people at risk, which is creating a massive issue, which means that they're not going to share that information. Now, what does that mean for the United States when our allies are unwilling to share intelligence for us? And for somebody who claims to be putting us into a stronger position, this does not feel like a stronger position.
Not at all.
And what is Trump's response to this? Trump's response to this is, oh,
They made an oopsie. They made an oopsie. Anybody can make an oopsie.
no, I'm saying his response to Canadian and European pressure. Oh, we're going to increase tariffs, and for everybody who doesn't understand, tariffs punish the country that puts the tariffs in place. We know this, which is why we know that tariffs suck,
Yeah.
right? If you can have very specific tariffs for very specific reasons, but blanket tariffs punish the country that puts the tariffs in place. So basically, what Trump is saying is, hey, you guys are being mean to us, so we're going to punish ourselves for you being mean to us. And again, this is in the interest of somehow making us stronger.
It's all incompetence.
This is stupid
Yes.
beyond stupid. You're adding stupidity to stupidity.
Yeah. I actually send you the Pentagon memo that says you can't use it. Stuff.
Yeah, cool. We'll link to the Pentagon memo in the notes because that's. But I just feel like we so often we miss the story,
Yeah.
right? We miss the story, and that the story is the implications. It's the second order thing that's scary.
Yeah.
But I am very impressed with the new prime minister in Canada,
Canada.
and I think he has set up a brilliant power move. He called elections for April 28th. And now what he's done is he has taken a strong position with Trump. He has taken actions that have cut off these connections with the regime. And he has positioned himself brilliantly to take the upper hand.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden he's using these laws like he's disdaining the things that he cannot have.
Yeah.
And he's crushing his enemy totally by saying, "You fine, I'm going to call your bluff and I'm going to cut you off from everything, and then we'll see if that's what you want."
Yeah.
He's either going to get in on April 28th a powerful remit from the Canadian people to continue along these veins. Like he's going to have an election more recent than November where he's going to say, "No, my people, they really want me to not deal with you because I just had this election, and I took a strong stance before the election, and they all voted for the strong stance," which is the thing that Democratic politicians don't seem to get in the U.S. is the power of the strong stance.
Yes.
And people voting for that strong stance rather than being weak and trying to follow the other party the whole time and trying to be nice the whole time, take a strong stance and get the votes for that strength, which is what the Canadian Prime Minister's done, which
and
I
done
is
really well. Really well. That speech was like, this is who we are. Buckle up, people. And you can't mess with us. I really liked the stance that he took.
It was a beautiful power move. And what is interesting, and again, can't necessarily, there's some interpretation here, but it sounds like Trump was definitely set off. He immediately said something about we're open to negotiations on tariffs because basically Trump is a paper tiger. He did paper lion. He just backs down on everything.
Mhm.
And he said apparently Trump was, I need to have a call. I need to have a call. I need to have a call. And Carney said, well, we'll see. And then Trump tweeted or truthed out, I don't know what, on his whatever platform he has. I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and we'll be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter, which is bizarre. It can't possibly have been written by Trump, first of all, because sentences are complete.
Yeah.
But he said, I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. He didn't say with the governor of our 51st state.
Yeah.
He didn't say, he didn't insult him. He didn't call him a name. He didn't belittle him. He didn't belittle Canada.
That's how you know he didn't write it.
It's a realization that he's going to have to change his behavior. He's losing the negotiation. Because I think Trump is a lousy negotiator, by the way. And I think his business dealings have demonstrated terrible negotiation capabilities. I think he's realized in this case that we're in real trouble because I think there's something in his brain around defense. And when all of a sudden he loses security information from Canada and loses NORAD, he realizes, oh shit, maybe I need to do something. And now he's being nice. But what's clear is that Carney now has the upper hand. And that is fascinating. And I think that for anybody thinking about how do I negotiate with, how do I change the dynamic, how do I do something different, I think this dynamic is a great one. Call them on their bluff. Take actions. Be ready to understand what you are going to do if they don't agree with you and be consequential. That's what Canada is doing. Trump, there's no consequence. tariffs today, or here today, gone tomorrow, here, there. We don't even know where he stands, what he's doing.
No, because
Nothing that he
he'll just
negotiates
flip-flop back and
stands
forth.
longer than a day anyway.
But see, that's because he flip-flops back and forth is why we're losing trust everywhere. And we'll continue to lose trust, because what creates trust is that you say what you're going to do, and then you do that, and I can trust that's the way it's going to be. Trump is going to say whatever he needs to say to whoever's in front of him right now to try to get the thing that he wants to get. And if he talks to 10 people, he'll give them 10 different stories.
Yep.
Because he's
not playing the strategy game. Have you ever played chess?
Yeah.
So when you play chess, there are two ways to play chess. You can look at each move individually.
Yeah.
Or you look out 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 moves. I can maybe do 2, but anyway, you look out to those next moves. And Trump is looking at each move individually, which means that anybody who is looking at the next stage or the implications of each move can actually circle him and checkmate him pretty easily, because all he's doing is looking at what's right in front of him, and he does not have a brain that is capable of anything beyond
the next
immediate
move.
results
This
and attention.
It's whatever the next move is, and that's all he's focused on, the next move. And geopolitics doesn't work that way.
I don't think anything big works that way. Geopolitics doesn't work that way. Local politics, economics don't work that way. Like, there's always a second move. There's always what happens next. And I think that brings us to the next topic, which is that what he's doing to free speech and the chilling effect that this is having. So I think that while this Signal thing is happening, and that's a big deal because it's cutting off access to information and it's pissing off our external people, the moves this week against law firms and against students have been remarkable. So we have him going after multiple law firms with executive orders threatening their existence, which right there, the fact that he's writing executive orders that threatens the existence of law firms is bizarre. Threatening the existence of these law firms by cutting them off from contracts, by cutting off their security clearance. And then we have law firms who are negotiating deals. And we've also seen this in the press with press outlets who are negotiating deals. And what happens is, in these law firms and in these press outlets, is the conversation goes something like, oh, it's way too expensive for us to stand up against the regime, so don't do it.
Yeah. Don't do it. Just capitulate. Just give them what they want.
Just capitulate. Everything that we do has to be in agreement with the regime, because if it's not in agreement with the regime, we're going to have to give another $100 million. We're going to be punished again. Something's going to punish us again. And it is embarrassing to see these large law firms just roll over and play dead, right? These are law firms. These are big law firms,
$2 billion law firms.
And they're rolling over and playing dead immediately, rather than standing up for the legal system. I mean, if you thought that the legal system in the U.S. was corrupt before, my goodness. And now, so any position, what that does is it changes the dynamic of legal arguments, because now you can't find a lawyer to argue your case. And we have lots of cases going against the regime at the moment for firing people inappropriately, for taking inappropriate actions.
Yeah.
And all of these law firms are now being
penalized.
Are now saying, oh, we can't possibly help you with that because we're so afraid of the regime.
Yep.
And that's going to be a major issue when it comes to free speech and when it comes to holding the regime accountable.
Yeah. One of the things that happened this week also is a Turkish student at Tufts University abducted in the street in the middle of the day by ICE. Like,
but it's worse than that. It's worse than that because the person was abducted by people wearing plain clothes and masks
Yes.
in the street.
Yes.
How the hell is this person supposed to know that these people are in any way legitimate,
Yeah.
first of all?
Yep.
Like, how can that possibly be okay? Now we have plainclothes people running around with masks, running around kidnapping people from the street. And why? Because they don't like something that the student said somewhere.
Yeah. And the student, she already had her suspicions, so she had asked the university to take her picture down because she was being doxxed. I'm scared that something is going to happen because I wrote an article in the school newspaper like a year ago or whatever it was. And so it's crazy that you can't. How long is it before they start? How long is it before they start coming after us, Jeff? Because
I don't think it's long enough. No, but they are coming after us, right? Because look at what they've done to 60 Minutes. Look at what they've done to the broadcast networks, right? Oh, you're broadcasting something that I don't approve of. I'm coming after you. That is happening to us. When they go after the law firms, that is happening to us. If you have a problem, so let's say that now you go out and you say, no, I disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene that the Democrats are creating hurricanes. Okay.
And they have a space laser.
Now all of a
They have a
sudden,
space laser.
and Jewish space lasers, right? So now all of a sudden, you can't find somebody to defend you when you say, no, I disagree with that. And if you're an immigrant, let's say you're an immigrant and you are studying climatology, or you're studying, what is it called, meteorology, and you talk about how hurricanes are formed, now all of a sudden you can be deported by talking about how hurricanes are formed because it goes against what the regime says.
Yeah.
Or let's say that you are a doctor and you're studying doctors. See, one of the advantages that the U.S. has always had has been this brain drain. We bring smart people from abroad and we train them and they stay here, and then we get all of the smart people. Okay, so we bring this smart person over and we teach them how to be a doctor. And then that doctor writes an article saying vaccines are actually really important because they've been vital to the extension of life. It's due to vaccines that we don't have polio. It's due to vaccines that we've extended our life from 37 years on average to over 70 years on average. They write that article. The next day, they can find themselves
on a plane,
kidnapped by plainclothes people wearing masks because they are now saying something against the regime.
Yeah, and if this starts, not if it starts, it started already.
It has started. But if it continues unabated.
But if it continues unabated, some group of people could decide, you know what, we could go grab people off the street. And how would you know whether they're real or not? Because
funny that you should say that, because there is a rise in aggressive attacks by private citizens on people that they suspect of pedophilia. Now, none of us supports the idea of pedophilia. However, is it right that some random person decides that you are guilty of something? I don't care how heinous it is.
Yeah.
They decide that you are guilty of something. And they now come and attack you without any due process, without you being able to defend yourself, without you being able to point out that they're mistaken, that they've got the wrong person. And we have the regime currently talking about compensating people who were accused of crimes in the January 6th insurrection, like compensating them. So not only has he pardoned them, but now he's talking about compensating them for their troubles, which again leads to what's going to happen when there is a conflict. And I think, I don't think it's an if. I don't think it may happen in the future.
Yeah, it's coming.
I think it is happening right now, today, that private groups are taking action and are not going to be held account for those actions because they are consistent with what the regime wants.
Terrifying.
And for anybody who thinks that it's okay because I'm on the side of the regime, there is no being on the side of the regime. There is there's no agreement because there is nothing that the regime believes in other than themselves.
Yes.
They make it up as they go along. So it's whatever feels good. It's whatever commentator gets the most likes. It's whatever is driven on Fox News or I don't know, any of these conservative channels,
Freedom Now,
whatever they are. Right? So whatever becomes popular is the thing that people are going to start talking about. And if you were against that yesterday, because the regime was against it yesterday, and now everybody else is for it, but you were against it yesterday. Now you're the one that they're going to come after.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. There is zero ideological consistency. There is only the opinion of the people in charge today, and nobody is safe. You just think of Rudolph Giuliani, right? Talk about somebody who gave everything for the regime, gave everything to support Trump. And what did Trump do to him?
Bury him.
Froze him out.
Yeah.
The guy is bankrupt and had to give all of his money to somebody in a defamation lawsuit. Talk about a fall from grace. But that's what is going to happen to everybody because it is about them. It is not about any sort of reliable ideology.
That is. But so what do we do, Jeff? We're having these conversations, so that's important, right? But
do you think it comes back to finding ways to organize? And I'm still interested in this organization, how to do that better. I'm not a great organizer, but I'm certainly thinking, how do we organize against this, right? I think it's those who are in power, like for law firms, understand that you do have power and there are things that you can do. It's like Law 28, interaction with boldness. Right? So instead of realize that he's playing a one move game, and look, if you're a lawyer charging a couple $1,000 an hour, you're smarter than he is. So you can play a 2-step game. I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
I think thinking about planning all the way to the end, Law 29. And it's not that I'm infatuated with these laws, but I think it's a great way for us to think about, to get out of our heads, right? So Law 29, plan all the way to the end. By pursuing legal action, the firms could think long-term about the implications. So think about what this means 3 or 4 steps out. Again, that same idea of 3 or 4 steps out. And, but I think that for you, and I do think we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
I think that we need to find ways to organize. I think that we need to, I will say that leads to one other situation. And it is, there are lots of elections and special elections happening around the US, and we're seeing some Republican strongholds going Democratic. So we see that there's an election in Florida where Trump won by 15 percentage points, where now the election is a toss-up. So we'll see on Tuesday. There's another one, I think, in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure, this is all memory, but where Trump won by like 30 points, and now it's competitive. We also have this thing in Wisconsin where Musk is putting
20 million,
tens of millions of dollars into supporting a particular justice. And he's doing this specifically to make sure that he can have Tesla dealerships in Wisconsin. And because the Wisconsin Supreme Court was really 4-3 on some issues that went against the Republicans. And so I think that we need to be aware of and get involved in all of these things. We need to organize, we need to give money, we need to support candidates, and we need to demand from our politicians better results. But I don't think we can just wait for the politicians. I think we need to come together and think differently about what we want.
Yeah.
We need people to start painting. We need people to start painting a better vision for the country and embrace that vision. And I think we need to recognize that this system that we've set up, this legal system, this power system that we've set up is broken. And we need to start having real conversations about how to change that.
And that's really the key right there, what you just said, because one of the things we like, like I say, you broke my brain. Sometimes you say things that break my brain a little bit. And what I mean by that, I don't mean break bad. It's like, you're like,
or maybe, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. But one of the things that you said to me is, look, democracy's over, right? It's done. And I started thinking about that and pushing it out. And I said, yeah, if we stay in a two-party system, we can't fix it, because it's just, you have to get more ridiculous and more egregious and more, you have to keep going further and further away to the left and to the right to be able to, and it's interesting because the other thing that you had said to me about a year ago is that as the right moves further, the left gets dragged along. So they just end up in the old position of the right.
There's this weird perception that because the right is getting extreme, that the left is being extreme.
No, it's getting pulled over.
It's actually not the case. If you look at the Democrats and the Republicans on the global scale, the Democrats are pretty significantly right of left, and they keep moving farther right. So a lot of the policies that the Democrats are now espousing, things like free trade, are traditional Republican positions. And a lot of the things that we're now talking about is actually the Democrats trying to find compromise and trying to find a center with an organization that has defined itself in opposition of the Democrats. So there is no center, because every time the Democrats take a step towards finding a center, all they're doing is taking a step towards, it's not right or left. That's actually bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that conservatism has to be made up. I think there are legitimate conservative ways of thinking. What we're calling the right has gone off the ledge into fantasy world. And the further the Democrats try and chase them, the further away from reality they go.
Yeah.
And the problem is, Joe, and we will talk about it on this podcast. I'm working on the podcast itself, but we will talk about the math behind this, because this is actually a case of the prisoner's dilemma. And it shows why there is very little opportunity for us to change this. There's no incentive for anybody to change this. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to stand up. And it goes back to one of the other things that we talked about, Joe, 3.5%, right? We need 3.5% of the population to say, no, this is enough. 3.5%.
But that means
to stand up and non-violently stand up and say, enough is enough. We want this country to be run for our citizens. We want more equitable distribution of wealth. We want more opportunity. We want better education, not worse education. We want Social Security that works. We want health care that works. And we want to stop with the silliness of the fraud and the graft and the corruption. And we want a fair shake at things, and we want to be sure that we continue to exist. We want to take care of the environment. We want clean water. We need to find a way to stand up. And so your question is, what do we do? I don't know yet. And part of putting this podcast together, part of putting this discussion together, is to try and figure that out.
Yeah.
Because I think one of our tasks is to figure out, well, how are we going to organize so that we get beyond the silly conversation of whether it's right or wrong to use Signal, or whether the Atlantic was copied correctly or incorrectly, or why did this guy have the name in his address book anyway, to why are we using telephones to discuss things that are not allowed to be discussed on telephones because that is scary? And how do we respect the reality of the situation rather than get completely bogged down in what the regime believes is important today and the inconsistencies that implies.
Yeah. But there's that. But there's the thing that I've been thinking about since, like I said, all these things since you broke my brain, is that we have to, in order for us to organize, we have to come up with a new structure. The current structure doesn't work. So what's the ideology for the new structure? And it has to be clear, and it has to be, so in order for people to get organized, they have to understand what is the message? What is it that we're trying to get done here?
And there are things that can be done now without completely restructuring the
Yeah.
government. So things like instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, a lot breaks some of the mechanism that forces us into this win-lose situation. And your Republicans hate it. They hate it because it does allow for a breaking and okay, Republicans hate it. Democrats aren't always wild about it because it does break that power lock that they have. But this is the type of thing that we can put in place as citizens, that we can insist on.
Can you talk a little bit about
It
what
doesn't
instant
require-
runoff voting is and how it works? And
What we need to do now is a lot like you like to say, stay informed. And I think that we have to take the actions where we can. So look at those special elections, make a lot of noise. Don't give in
Yes.
to the regime. So anybody who is in power, those law firms, please stand up for some right. Do something,
Yeah.
right? If you see somebody being attacked in the street, I don't know, support them. Somehow we have to get out and start taking these risks to stand up for our rights.
Yeah.
But we will talk more about that and talk more about what we can do. You have any parting words, Joe?
as usual, yeah, what I'm going to tell you out there is stay informed, and I think you have to stay informed and get an action. So figure out what is the action that you can take from where you are that's going to make a difference.
And we will talk more about actions and what we can do and what's going on and how to use power on the future episodes of Masters of Influence.
That's it for this episode of Masters of Influence. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who wants to understand power. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and keep mastering the game.